Group B, we've got England, Iran, USA, and Wales. Some beefs, some international beefs in this group. Holy hell. Some geopolitical derbies. Do we want to start with your boys, or do we want to circle to them at the end?
Nah, come on, let's get it out of the way.
Okay.
I think, look, where we were even last summer versus where we are, hence, are very different positions, you know? We kind of massively, arguably, outperformed the country's expectations, but probably performed in line with the reality of the talent that has been coming off the production line in this country in the last few years. But since then, if you look at all the Nations League games where we just didn't really turn up and try, and it finally looks like the chickens have kind of come home to roost a little bit on the way that Southgate is playing, and, you know, him not really changing things or seeming to have the tactical acumen to maybe take some of the talent and the quality that we have in the squad to the next level. I'd say people, if we'd like done really well in the Nations League and none of these conversations were taking place, English people would be unbearable right now. We would be talking about this like we are going to win the World Cup. But I almost think the nation kind of prefers it when we consider ourselves just a little bit shit. It takes the pressure off a little bit, and we kind of like having something to moan about. But yeah, I think there's not the level of expectation that there would have been if we were immediately going in from the last summer.
I think possibly the biggest sign of England going off the boil is that there isn't anything like the pretense towards it's coming home this time.
Oh no,
I don't. And yeah, like I said, it'll be interesting because it's the first time in maybe a couple of generations where that expectation isn't on England, for right or for wrong. And will they play better without that weight of expectation? I'm not sure, because I think even without that weight of expectation, they've still got the weight of Gareth Southgate on them, and
the Gareth Southgate.
Yeah, and some things that the two of us have often talked about, I know, is his over-reliance to a fault on his regular guys. And I know, speaking from personal experience of watching the man, that I can't fathom how on merit Harry Maguire is in this team. Let
alone the squad. Why is he in the squad even? He hasn't played football.
He'll be starting.
I know.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm all for it, personally.
I'm sure you are, yeah. I'm fully expecting a back three of like Stones, Dyer and Maguire. Yeah, and that just doesn't fill me full of massive confidence. It's a top heavy team. I think if you look at even from the midfield up, you know, if we do play that kind of 3-4-3 formation, we've got Bellingham and Rice, which is a really solid midfield. Jude Bellingham is turning into one of the biggest superstars on the planet, and just ripping it up over for Dortmund in the Bundesliga right now, and not just in the Bundesliga but in the Champions League too. So like you can see there's a genuine authentic quality there that you can't really just sort of go, oh, it's only in the Bundesliga. Like, that guy is a very, very good player, and he will be going for a 3-figure sum at some point of millions of pounds, probably either this summer or next summer, I think, to one of the top Premier League teams,
or Real Madrid, as has often been rumoured.
Yeah, entirely possible. And then, you know, Harry Kane still remains one of the best strikers in the world. I think the only issue with Kane is, you know, he sort of comes in and out of fitness and form, and, you know, obviously last World Cup Golden Boot, obviously scored quite a few of those goals against some real jobbers, but still he's got that on his CV, so it's pretty good achievement, and I wonder if he'll be inspired to kind of keep that going with some perceived jobber teams in this group, although I think we need to be a little bit careful about our expectations with them.
I think I think something I would definitely worry about as the England fan with the scheduling of this World Cup is that there's nothing sadder to see than what Harry Kane plays like when he's tired.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but if we find the right balance of between like Saka and Rashford and Sterling and Foden and Mount, or even, I mean, he made the squad just because he's been just ripping it to pieces in the last year or so, to be honest. But James Maddison, it would be cool to see him at some point, although in my head, I kind of feel like Southgate's never really liked him, and this is just a spite pick. He's going to take him all the way to Qatar, and he's not going to see a single minute of game time. But that is a lot of talent that we have in those forward areas, and it's just finding the right way to bring the best out of them. Maybe a coach with a bit more, like I said, tactical acumen, a bit more experience, might be able to do it. But Southgate, I don't know if the faith is there personally for me that he's going to be able to fit these pieces together in the right way to bring the best out of England. Saying that, I really do think we should win this group.
Yeah, no, you absolutely should. And something I will say is it seems like it's set up for that classic England run of fairly coast through the groups, and then as soon as you come up against one of the big contenders, it all absolutely falls apart. And I think we were doing some math on the back of a napkin, which we will do again later in the show, so I don't want to tip our hand too early, but if things go the way a lot of people expect the other groups to go, it's not exactly an easy path to a final for England this time. No, it'll be tough. Just exasperated. No.
I've also run some of my own simulations and models of where I think the World Cup's going to go, and it's going to get tough for us almost immediately. So look, we need to get out of the group stage. There's no two ways about it. And then whatever is in play from there is in play. And I do get the feeling that if Southgate doesn't progress us, say beyond the second round, if we get to the quarterfinals, I think maybe he might just step down anyway. But if we don't get to at least the quarterfinals, I think it will be seen as a massive failure, and I think that will probably be a wrap on old Gary. And it's a shame because he does everything else, every other aspect of being a national team manager to perfection, apart from the on-the-field tactics. And
that actually managing.
Well, no, I think his management of humans is fantastic, but managing a football team tactically is kind of where he's let us down a little bit so far. And you know what? We knew the limitations when we took him on, and he's done a lot of good stuff. So I do have a lot of positives to say about him. But at the same time, do I think he's a particularly good manager? Would he walk into a Premier League job tomorrow? Probably not.
Let's talk about your noisy neighbours, Wales, who I think are a team that over the last few years have gotten, a lot of the, they're a lot of people's second teams that everybody always wants to see Wales do well. What are they bringing to the table this time? Because it feels like maybe the players they have relied on so much in the past are more than a little bit creaky at this stage. Gareth Bale, obviously, over at LAFC now. Their captain comes to mind, but also Aaron Ramsey, who I just learned in the research for this podcast is at Nice now.
He is.
So, hit me with your assessment on Wales's chances here in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to kind of point out what a fantastic job I think Rob Page has done with this Wales team, because there was another guy who was manager of this team. I won't mention him. You all know who he is. Yeah. And he left in particularly awful circumstances. I'm sure you know what they are as well. And he's managed to continue the work that has kind of been put over. Really started, back in the Speed era of just bringing this Wales team together as a unit, sticking to a familiar kind of 3-4-3, 3-5-2 formation in the way that they decide to play, having that consistency all the way through the levels, having the team have a great relationship with each other. And it does just seem that they foster this intense, burning team spirit and passion, and a real pride in their own national sense of self that I find it very difficult to achieve as an Englishman for a number of reasons. But it does sort of you look over at Wales and you've got Michael Sheed saying all kinds of shit, and they've got a big folk hymn song that everyone sings together, and the fans are just insane, and you just hear Ellis James's voice ringing around in your head every time you think of Wales. on the pitch, I think they're incredibly solid. Like, they have a consistent record of getting results time after time. Again, another very difficult team to score against. They usually stick with a back three. They'll play like Rodon, Ampadu, Davis in there, and Davis was like, to me, other than maybe Bale because of the goals, but was like man of the match in their qualifier against Ukraine to get into the World Cup. He was awesome. A midfield with Ramsey and Allen could be a bit creaky at this stage, maybe. I don't really know. And yeah, Kiefer Moore up front, just a big fucking lump. And if you look at the records that Peter Crouch had, specifically in international tournaments and just internationals in general, I don't know why, but a lot of other countries find it very difficult to deal with incredibly physical and tall forwards. So I think Kiefer Moore might actually grab a few goals in this tournament for Wales if they're allowed to kind of progress beyond the group stage. But Wales, I know obviously that they probably absolutely hate the sight of England, but I can't help but just have a genuine respect for everything. And it's their first World Cup since 1958. So, yeah. I mean, bloody hell. Like, if you can't be excited...
They've already won.
Yeah. Like, they really have, and it's the last hurrah for a lot of these guys. I don't think Bale ever sees a World Cup again. I don't think Ramsey ever sees a World Cup again. And I think they have been the two cornerstones of this team. So as like a last hurrah for them to really give it a go, it's going to be interesting. And like I said, they're not an easy team to play against. They can get results. And I think specifically their first game against the USA, who probably are a nation who have increasing expectations to do well at an international level, given the amount of players they now kind of ship out into Europe and develop pretty well these days, I would say. That's not going to be a straightforward aim for them at all. I think Wales are going to give every single element of their souls to make sure they try and get results in here. And you know what? Their last game of the group stage is against England. And if we need a result in that game, I'm not looking forward to playing that game because that's going to be a tough test for us because of it. Just adds that little extra 10% of them going, we could knock England out. You just imagine it. The team talk writes itself, doesn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk very quickly about the other two teams in the group. First, the United States that you just mentioned there a second ago, Jack, and they're an interesting team. Like you said, there's a lot more players now that have come to relatively prominent teams across Europe that we're seeing break through. For me, this is a team of like, it depends. If all their players that are name players show up, they could make a very decent account for themselves. But a few of them, I'm looking at the Weston McKennies of the world in particular, are patchy, and Dest, Serginho Dest as well, as a player that I think we all thought was maybe going to be at a higher level than he is now. Not to say that he's bad or anything like that, but I think when he first burst onto the scene and we heard people talk about him, I thought, this guy's going to be one of the top fullbacks in the world within a couple of years. He hasn't materialised at that level yet. We've got Tyler Adams at Leeds in the heart of the midfield, but in terms of their chances at this tournament progressing or making a good account for themselves, I think it's pretty much on the shoulders of two men for me, and that's Gio Reyna and Christian Pulisic.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you've just said. They're strangely inconsistent, the US, because they have got a lot of really good players. There is a lot of talent there, yet they still finished third in qualifying behind Canada, which is a big shock for everybody, I think, outside of CONCACAF and Mexico. So despite all of these kind of star names and just producing like genuinely well-rounded athletic footballers that they do have now, they still don't really know how to pull it together. They always feel like less than the sum of their parts, and I think there are a lot of games that the US have had where Pulisic specifically has just dragged them out of a massive hole. And despite having real struggles at club level at Chelsea, being able to get into the team, and then when he does get into the team, just find any consistency in the Premier League, he is a talismanic guy for them at international level, and a lot relies on him to be able to turn up and kick him up a notch when they need a goal. And Gio Reina's a fantastic player as well. Maybe not that I think he's that much younger than Pulisic, maybe like 4 or 5 years, but he's like the heir to the throne, I think, of Pulisic, coming through the same system at Borussia Dortmund, and he's definitely a difference maker for them as well. To me, the one thing I look at in this team is there's no defined goal getter. There's no centre forward that you'd look at on paper and think, this is a guy I don't really want to play against. It's kind of a mixture of dudes. I mean, they stay like Jesus Ferreira will play up front sometimes, and Jordan Morris will play up front sometimes. I know they've used Pulisic as a false nine in various configurations of the team, but despite having like a decent foundation, like for instance, nothing shocked me more this season, Dave, than Tim Ream at Fulham, because the last time he was in the Premier League, he was hot garbage, whereas this season he's been very good. So I'd imagine he probably would start for them at centre half. So it's a decent base for a team. It's just, to me, I don't know if I see enough goals being produced by this team to be able to get them, well, certainly deep in the tournament, no way, but are they going to be better than Wales? To me, that it all hinges on that first game that I think is just completely fascinating on paper.
A very quick mention. The only note I have about Iran here is Carlos Queiroz is the Jeff Jarrett of football. Man just keeps coming back and keeps on winning.
He's still coming back.
Is he this generation's Sven, that he just like stumbles into job after job in like increasingly obscure places?
Pretty much.
More power to him.
Yeah, I think this is his second spell as a manager of Iran, so he's obviously made a good impression in the country. There was a brief tour of Colombia and Egypt before he returned, but yeah, he's just a likable guy, isn't he, Carlos Queiroz? You just see him, he's got like a smile on his face, like an older Portuguese gentleman. You're like, okay, yeah, I definitely could.
He's got that smile on his face that's like, I can't believe it either, guys.
I'm loving life.
Just keep paying me to do this shit.
One thing I will say about this Iranian team is that the front three is actually fucking good, man.
Yeah.
You got Ali Reza Yakhavash, who Bruce Bell at Brighton and scored a spectacular overhead kick goal against my team. But other than that, is kind of doing a real good job out in Feyenoord. You've got Mehdi Taremi, who, just incredibly consistent player for Porto over the last few years. And then Serdar Ashmoun, who, again, I don't know what it is, but all of the players I'm seeing on these lists have just had amazing performances against Chelsea. But he scored an incredible goal against Chelsea in the Champions League last season for Zenit St. Petersburg. Yeah. And his performances at Zenit earned him a move to Bayer. And he's kind of gone a little bit cold at Bayer Leverkusen, but still, like, he has the potential and the pedigree to be a really great player, and he's netted like 41 and 65 for them at international level. So that's pretty serious. So if you kind of look at the combination of all those guys, you think, okay, that there might be something in this for Iran, that maybe that defense, doesn't fill you full of particular confidence, and there definitely is no household names in there. But if they get chances on the break, there's people in this team that can slot it away.
Let's do our where we think they're going to rank in this group. I am going to say England top.
Yep.
As much as it pains me.
Hey, cool, boys.
I did have one team in the second slot, but you know what? Your impassioned speech earlier has swayed me, and I'm going to go with my heart and say Wales.
Wow. Sorry, America.
Yeah, I think the Yanks are going to just come up short in third, with Iran being the relative whipping boys.
Like a level on points kind of gimmick.